Welcome to the Champs App podcast. Champs App is your recruiting and development co-pilot. If you are a player, parent, or coach, make sure to check out more content and tools to help navigate the world of youth hockey at champs.app. Also, if you've listened to the Champs App podcast in the past and it has helped you with your recruiting or hockey development, please tell your teammates and friends about Champs App. It would be even better if you subscribe to the podcast and review or rate us on whichever platform you're listening to or watching us on. Three, two, one. On today's episode, we have an amazing conversation with St. Lawrence University women's hockey head coach, Chris Wells. Chris discusses all the reasons why SLU is a great place to play hockey and go to school. Three, two, one. On today's episode, we have an amazing conversation with St. Lawrence University women's hockey head coach, Chris Wells. Chris discusses all the reasons why SLU is a great place to play hockey and go to school. He goes into detail on how the coaching staff runs the team and offers some great insights into many aspects of the recruiting process. You'll want to listen to this one all the way to the end, so please enjoy. Three, two, one. I really want to thank Chris for coming on the podcast. He was an amazing guest. You can connect with Chris on the St. Lawrence website or via his Champs App profile. Links to both are in the show notes. Hopefully by now you've heard of Champs IQ, our hockey video analysis service designed to give players and families honest, objective feedback on where a player's game truly is today. I want to take a moment to explain how it works and, more importantly, why it's been so impactful, because honestly, we've been blown away by how consistently positive the feedback has been from parents and players after they receive their reports. Several families have already used Champs IQ multiple times this season. One parent summed it up perfectly. The analysis report itself was impressive, far exceeding my expectations or the perceived value from the website. It provides an honest and detailed assessment of the player, which is incredibly useful for identifying strengths and weaknesses. Champs IQ is built for both boys and girls, skaters, and goalies. Players submit at least 10 minutes of edited game footage, and our expert analysts deliver a data-driven evaluation across more than 15 key attributes. Every report includes an overall rating, a projection of NCAA Division I potential, and most importantly, clear, actionable development priorities so players know exactly what to work on next. We hear this from a lot of parents. I thought I knew where my player was at, but this helped me truly understand where they need to improve. That clarity is what makes Champs IQ different. Now, we know video editing can feel intimidating at first. You can absolutely edit the video yourself, and we have step-by-step guides on Champs App to help. And if you use services like LiveBarn or the Prospect Exchange, those tools can make preparing your submission fast and easy. The submission guidelines may look detailed, but once you see an example, it's very straightforward. If you want to try Champs IQ, you can use coupon code ChampsIQ10. That's EYEQ10 for 10% off your submission. Just head to champsiq.com or visit Champs App and submit your player's video today. I'm delighted to welcome to the podcast Chris Wells, head coach of the St. Lawrence Saints women's hockey program. Originally from Canton, New York, Chris played college hockey at St. Lawrence before playing a little pro hockey in Europe. When he returned, he began his coaching career at Colgate University and Western Michigan, and then returned to his alma mater as an assistant coach with the men's team for 9 years. For the last 17 years, yes, 17 years, he has been the head coach at St. Lawrence, where the team made it to the second round of the NCAA playoffs the last 2 seasons. Welcome, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Ray. Happy to be on.
All right, so why don't we start you off like we do all of our guests, telling us how you actually started playing hockey in your hometown of Canton, which is obviously where you're still living. So maybe just give folks a little bit of history on you growing up playing hockey in the area.
Okay. I grew up playing in the rink behind you there. It's a great background. So it's going to make this interview easy. One of my favorite places on earth. I get to look at it here for the entire podcast. So
it's just for folks who are just listening, it's the background is, of course, Appleton Arena in the St. Lawrence, main rink. Go ahead.
And, it was the only rink in town, and our family was a skiing family. I had 2 older sisters, and my mom loved to ski, and we used to go up to Big Tupper and ski, and wasn't quite good enough for Whiteface at that time, but Tupper Lake was about an hour and 10 minutes away. And Bernie McKinnon, when I was 5 years old, walked into the house and said, Chris is going to play hockey. So my mom said, no, he's not. This is a skiing family. We're not going to spend the weekends in hockey rinks. Bernie won, and my mom to this day stands on the goal line at all the home games. She doesn't quite make all the road games like she used to, but at 89 and a half years old, she stands right on the goal line at Appleton Arena in the kind of right-hand corner of where you're at there. That's her view. And my dad and mom both worked at the University of St. Lawrence. So, Canton has been home for us. St. Lawrence has been our livelihood forever. I went here. Obviously, my parents worked here, as I mentioned. My wife and I, Kate, have had 2 or 3 children go to St. Lawrence. Our oldest child is coaching the assistant coach for the women's lacrosse team. She played lacrosse here. Our son played lacrosse here. So very well connected, place near and dear to our hearts. But it was great, growing up and idolizing all the players from St. Lawrence. And everybody from Canton just dreamed to be able to play for St. Lawrence. And now the special thing is, boys and girls can grow up and dream to play at St. Lawrence. Back when we were growing up, the women's hockey wasn't as prevalent, even though it started, at St. Lawrence in 75. That just wasn't as prevalent. So, now all the young girls around here have a great opportunity to travel a path very similar to what I did. Played Canton High School hockey all the way through, graduated Canton High School, played for PJ Flanagan. He was our high school coach, and then went to Hotchkiss for a year, PG'd, and called Joe Marsh back up and just said, hey, I'm coming to St. Lawrence. And the rest was history, and kind of always knew I wanted to get into coaching. And that's how I ended up at Colgate, because Donnie Vaughn was my assistant coach for 2 years at St. Lawrence, and a spot opened up there. And very fortunate for Donnie to give me an opportunity to get into the game. And I knew I was going to love it, but after the first month and a half, you realize how little you actually know about what happens in the game. So I've spent the better part of 32 years after that just trying to figure out that balance of coaching and the player mindset of not coaching too much, but also trying to instill as much knowledge to help in the game that I would have liked to have when I was playing back then.
So what is that like? What are the biggest differences between playing and coaching that you had to learn that you didn't realize as a player that's so important as a coach?
Well, I mean, I just think, systematically, some of the things I think, consistently watching stick positioning, angles. I mean, those were big things, and that I learned, and just some power play schemes. I mean, I wasn't a power play guy at St. Lawrence, and back in high school, the power play, PJ would send Greg Carville and I and a couple people over the boards, and we'd go around the power play. But mostly it was just kind of an overload of some sort. Work it down low, get it to the net, and we scored because we were playing high school hockey.
Gotcha. And Greg Carville, I believe, is just, by the way, so folks, so Greg Carville, I believe, the coach of UMass, the men's team. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he grew up in Canton as well, and we played high school hockey and played at Hotchkiss and played at St. Lawrence together, actually, as well too. But I think just learning some of the power play schemes, and I mean, I'm always learning still. Just in terms of this year, I think puck support has always been a big piece of our game, but we've been able to add some layers of puck support that have come new to us if it was a dinner menu, if you will. We got a little different dinner menu, and we've been able to add a couple of little different puck support things that we haven't in the past. The game's always evolving. Having the young coaches come in is great. They give you a lot of new ideas, a lot of good energy. And it's just still the foundation of the fundamentals. You got to work hard at the end of the day. That's one, and pressure the puck 2, and take away space 3, and then how you want to do that and create chemistry within your own team is the final final piece to get you playing as far into February and as March as you can.
Gotcha. Okay, we're going to get more into your team in a moment, but I want to talk about St. Lawrence University a little bit more. You obviously haven't gotten very far from home since for the last 26 years. So I'm just curious, what makes Canton and St. Lawrence such a great place to live and go to school?
Well, I think the universities up here, not only in Canton, but Potsdam, 10 miles away, there's four-year colleges, SUNY Canton, SUNY Potsdam, Clarkson, and St. Lawrence. So you have a great diversity and, a learning environment. And, so many people from Canton have gone on and done some wonderful things, non-athletically, but athletically as well. But, Canton's a place you can run out your front door and play capture the flag, chase right up the road, and here comes a car. You just got to jump out of the road, let the car pass, and you're playing again. And then, walk half a mile across town and you're watching some of the best amateur athletes in the world to be able to play. So it's a great place to grow up, a great place to play outside. We don't have all the amenities like a lot of places do. So I think, one of the biggest things that, our children, our generation and our children's generation, like they play, even my kids come home and they're running out the door. They're still playing when they come home to visit and doing things. And it's just kind of, it's not stuck in time, but it's a place where you don't have all the malls and the box stores and the restaurants. You have to get creative to have some fun, and you have to be able to go out and do the things that we all did as kids. So I think it keeps it pretty lively, keeps it friendly. Everybody's helping everybody out. It's small town USA. People are snow blowing your driveway. If we're on the road and there's a big, snowstorm, I'll come home and the driveway's plowed off, the car's cleared off, and it's just a good place. And then, as I was saying, Ray, to be able to have the university right in town, it's just, athletically, specifically, this is a hockey podcast, so, I'll talk about that. I mean, to have those role models and those players to look up to achieve, to play Division I or even college hockey at any level. There's been so many players from Canton and Potsdam, and I think a big part of that is because of the universities that support Division I hockey and have promoted that, and that's created a great runway for a lot of young people coming through Canton. But it's a great place. You walk down the street, everybody says hello to you. You feel friendly. You feel like you can go anywhere to get some help, and you gotta sometimes you gotta learn to be bored, and I think that's a big skill in life. You gotta we all at some point travel, do stuff. When we're done with college, we don't have all the things to keep us energized. You end up spending some time with yourself. You'll spend some time with yourself in Canton if you come as a student here, and you got to learn how to be bored. And I think that's a huge life skill. And once you can accomplish that, then a lot of that dead time that we might have that other places, urban areas, don't have. You've created a path to be successful beyond college. Knowing that you can be in places and not have to be stimulated by external sources.
Tired of spending hours emailing coaches with no idea if they're even reading your messages? Champs App Messaging is the fast, easy way to send personalized, error-free emails and know exactly when they've been opened. The coach's name, school, and email are automatically populated for you, so every message is accurate and complete. Choose from smart templates that pull your details directly from your Champs App profile, whether you're sharing your schedule or a new video. Cut your email time in half and finally see which teams are showing interest. One parent told us, what used to take a whole evening now takes under 2 hours. Champs App Messaging, faster, smarter recruiting, made easy. Well, speaking of, making sure that you have what you need to keep you busy, how cold does it get at Appleton Arena? And what are the resources like for training there as an athlete? Because, you may not have all the fancy stuff that a big Ivy League school might have with all the fancy equipment. But what is it that you guys do that helps your athletes succeed?
Well, right in behind you is Appleton Arena, and that photo is just after our $20 million renovation in 2019, 2020. The rink speaks for itself. There's not another one in the country like it. It just, screams college hockey, and it is just a wonderful place. This time of year, you mentioned how cold it is. I spoke at an alumni event in between our games, the men's game and our game on Saturday, and the biggest thing was like, this is hockey. This is hockey time in Canton. The late January, early February. There's not a lot going on. Not a lot of. It's not hunting season. It's cold. People need something to do, and that's been come to Appleton. And I remember as a kid, I grew up 2, 3 streets over from St. Lawrence. We'd walk out of the house and walk to the rink, and you'd hear the snow crunching under your feet, and walk through the paths to get to the rink, and you walk into Appleton. So in terms of what we have, I start with Appleton because it's unlike any other place in the country. And then with the renovation underneath our player space, coaching space, I haven't seen a lot. I know there's been a number of renovations around since 2020, but in terms of comfort and just making our players feel the way they should while they're in college, it is probably as good as it gets. And then the real big piece that helps us is 50 yards down the hallway. We have a 5,000 square foot training facility, shooting room, turf, 8 squat racks, any sort of weight limit you need, and dumbbells, and that's just for 2 teams, the men's and women's ice hockey team. And we have a strength coach that's dedicated just to those 2 teams, Jared Hatz, who does phenomenal work, really in tune with the athletes of both genders. He does a great job with both teams. So that is a great piece. The resources to be able to get off the ice and then just walk 50 yards down the hallway to be able to do that. A lot of other places you have to go outside, and certainly when it's a little chilly, that's a little tougher. But at the end of the day, Ray, the real resources around here in the town of Canton, as you started off in St. Lawrence, are the people. Our staff's been together 17, 18 years. Britt Goot joined a couple of years ago, and that's she's part of the fabric here as a player and a captain of our team. And so she was able to jump right in and make a good connection with coach and players, and do a lot of good things. She's done a lot with student wellness, and I just fired myself from the PP, so she and Teddy are taking that over here down the stretch. But our staff, the consistency that we have, not only with our staff, the consistency of the experience that all the players have coming through here, for the last 17, 18 years. They can walk through the door and feel like they're back home, because the same people that were here when they were in school are still here. And Jared now in the strength and conditioning room, and just the support people, the trainers that we have, they generally stay a long period of time. They're a huge part of it since I've been here. And our athletic administration, the same thing, the same people. Like, people can come back, it truly is alumni weekend. They come back and hear all the people that were here when they were athletes. So with all the nice shiny things, I'll hang my hat on the people that we have here as being the best resource, and I'll take that to the finish line any day of the week.
So you're episode 126. I've interviewed coaches from every single NCAA D1 team, and you're the only coaching staff that's been together basically the entire time of your tenure, 17 years, with Ted Boomer Wisner and Mary McDougall Barry, who was, folks want to look it up, interviewed on a previous episode of the Champs App podcast. So how do you guys all stay together, and why do you stay all together? Obviously, like, you're a family, but what is it that keeps the bond going year after year?
Well, but both Ted and I grew up here in Canton, and I think we all kind of have our own special place in this profession and what we like to do. Ted loves to recruit. I mean, he was a head coach at Colgate University, won National Coach of the Year back in 99, 2000. And he likes to recruit. And as you've seen, Ray, you've been on the road, so you've seen him. Everybody knows Ted. He's on the road. Ted loves to recruit. So that's where he is. He's a recruiter. He's probably making 15, 16 games a year for us. But the other time he's out on the road, finding all the players that come to St. Lawrence. And then, Mare has she's done a great job in so many different ways. She's kind of like the caretaker of all of us in the office, and has probably one of the largest hearts that I've ever seen. She cares so much about everybody. She looks to take care of everybody. Uh, and then on top of that, she's a good hockey coach. So, I mean, outside of being able to go in and talk to her about anything, she runs our D and our penalty kill. And she's very happy with the role that she is in.
Yep.
Um,
If I remember correctly, she also does strength and conditioning and is also a professor, if I remember correctly.
The strength and conditioning piece got taken off her plate because the thing was gigantically full, but also just because of the renovation and a full-time position for us. So that's what Jared has done, and it's made a big difference. Freed her up a little bit to do some other things, and teaching, and she loves teaching, and she does a wonderful job with all of our players, guiding them through some of the things that they don't get over on the other side of campus, just because of the connectivity with knowing of the professors, knowing what our schedule is year in and year out, and when we're going to be traveling. Kind of, she knows the curriculum so well that it really helps them out. But Mare loves what she does. Boomer loves what he does. And I get to coach the team. I don't think there's probably, and that's what I like to do. I like to coach the team. I like coaching. And so I get to coach. I can't imagine there's another head coach in the country that gets to coach their team as much as I do. And no one's looking to leave, really. I mean, everybody likes what they're doing, where they're living. And Mare moved here in 2006, worked under PJ, and she's from small town Saskatchewan, but she transplanted nicely right here into Canton, and she's married to the current athletic director here, Franco Bari. So obviously another St. Lawrence connection, and Ted's born and raised and has a family here, and his wife works at a local school, and so I don't see a whole lot of change. And Gooder's been able to jump in, as I say, right in the sidecar, and she's been able to ride along the road with us perfectly. She's done just a nice job finding her way, and really having a good connection with the players and being able to pass that information along to me.
Gotcha. All right. So you talked about everything that the reason why people like being there. So, and you like coaching. So, but how much do you like beating Penn State in the first round of the playoffs?
Well, I like beating anybody in the first round of the playoffs, and it's obviously the last couple of years it's been Penn State, and that's just kind of how it goes. Last year was kind of ironic. Tim Danny, he's a person in town who's very well connected with the NPI, and how the computer system works and the rankings, and so he came up to me before we played our semifinal game against Colgate last year. So that was the Friday, and we were kind of right on the bubble. And he goes, "Okay, here's 5 things that need to happen for you guys to get in the tournament." And 4 of them didn't happen on Friday. So our last chance in the tournament was for Penn State to beat Mercyhurst the next day. So I couldn't watch, I couldn't listen, I couldn't check the stats. I was just like, nobody contact me. I don't want to know. Our son had a lacrosse game. I went and enjoyed the lacrosse game. And one of the lacrosse parents came flying up to me halfway, through our game, and he said, he goes, "Penn State's up, only 10 minutes to go," so obviously they got us in the tournament. And then because the seedings had to get jumbled around, so we didn't play Clarkson, we ended up drawing Penn State. Camper and I, longtime buddies, love Camper, great relationship, love their staff. So it's kind of bittersweet playing them, because I like to see Camper have a lot of success, and hopefully he feels the same way about us. So, the nice thing is one of us got to move on, but one of us had to go home too. But, obviously for a place like St. Lawrence University to be able to go and move on in the NCAA tournament while beating a Big Ten team, that gets people pretty excited, and start to hear from people that I never even knew followed us, people that I went to school with that, haven't talked to in a long time. It's different when, St. Lawrence beats Penn State in the NCAA tournament. It speaks volumes. And obviously it's been able to help us in the recruiting here over the last couple of years to be able to kind of fill in the classes that helped us get to the tournament the last 2 years. We're kind of back into having another couple of classes that we feel are going to be pretty competitive here.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I don't feel bad for Penn State this year. Looks like they're going to be one of the top 4 seeds, and so they'll be just fine this year. And then give them an opportunity to go to a Frozen Four. So yeah, you mentioned your team last year. You had 9 grad students last year, and obviously that really helped your team, and therefore you have 9 freshmen this year, which is obviously probably been a learning experience for them, and probably reflected in the standings. And correct me if I'm wrong, you don't have any scratches at all this year. You're basically playing all your skaters every game. How do you keep them all happy with ice time? Since I'm sure there are some players come in with a little bit higher level of performance right away, and other ones it might take them a year or two to adjust. How do you figure out how much ice time and who and helping with the development at the same time as you're trying to win games?
Yeah, I mean, everybody has been given a pretty good shot, and we play a handful of games and practices. We're able to drag some data out of that to be able to talk to them and be able to make some decisions.
Can you elaborate on when you say data? What data are you collecting, and how are you collecting it during practice?
We'll just keep regular fundamental stats in our small games sometimes. Really beneficial for the goalies, I feel, like just shots, saves, goals, and if we play 45 minutes of small games, they end up getting 50 shots. I mean, those are all pretty much, if you're playing small games, in the grade A areas. So, they can get a good chance of what their grade A save percentage is. Try to keep track. I haven't done it quite as much. We've gotten into it here just recently, later in the year, but we did it at the beginning of the year. Keep track of shots attempted in practice, in the small games, goals, assists, shots on net, shots blocked, that type of thing. Just kind of some small things. And, over the years, I think we've been able to find the watermark of a good practice and what somebody's doing. But I can say to you, Ray, hey, you haven't scored a lot of goals, so you come into me and you're like, hey, I'm not getting a lot of chances. Well, today we're going to play 45 minutes of small games. And, if a good watermark for 45 minutes, probably, 12 attempted shots in that period of time, you'll probably be one of the higher players on the team getting 12, push it to 60 and then it's 15, that type of thing. So
got it. Okay, that's helpful.
We might come up with a number and go back to the last practice and just say, hey, you had 4 shots on net in the small games. Well, no, there's a reason why you're not getting a lot of chances in the big games. You're getting 4 in a small game. So let's try to get 8, today. And, you come in, practice is over, you get cleaned up, you're heading out. By that time, I can have the numbers from the people who keep stats, and I can say to you, way to go, Ray, you had 8. Good job. And you can kind of leave the rink with something tangible and positive on a Monday or Tuesday, as opposed to having to wait till Friday and wait for the game.
Yeah.
Where there's
That's
so
awesome.
many uncontrollables, there's penalties, there's injuries, there's just games. The games that we play are uninterrupted. They're essentially 30-second shifts, and you get to play with everybody on the team. So there's a lot of variety there. So I feel like that's helped us in the past. Mind you, we haven't done a ton of that this year. A big piece is, everybody's been able to play, like you said, and so being happy. I'm sure there's plenty of players and athletes on the team that wish they were getting more ice time, but just try to communicate with them as much as possible. Let them know where I'm coming from. Doors always open. I'm not sure young college students always utilize it as much, but our space is a very open space. We can hear what the players are talking about in the lounge. They can hear what we're talking about in the coach's office. So not a ton of secrets around here, but just try to, put them in a comfortable environment where they feel like they can play their best hockey and come and approach the coaches.
Gotcha. Okay, a couple more questions about the team. So you talk about keeping track of shots. You didn't mention goals in the small area games, but I noticed that your top player only has a half point per game. So what are you doing to get more goal scoring out of your young team?
Yeah, I mean, really, we've generated almost as many shots on net as we have in the past, for a team. And, just, I mean, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel there. It's get your hands free, get the puck and people to the net. I mean, there's all the analytics, you can still see all the goals are being scored, close to the net. So just trying to get to the net as much as possible. And, I think the chemistry piece is a big piece. Power play, been working on the power play here recently. Been happy with the progress of the power play. We haven't scored necessarily as much, but as coaches in the business like to say, we've been able to use the power play to maintain some momentum in the game, and I feel like that was not a piece of our game up until the last couple of weeks. From BC to Union RPI, which was the second weekend in January, we were about 25% on the PP, which is a great number. But it was either it was like home run derby. It was like a strikeout or an out. Like we went out and scored, or we were absolutely terrible, and we never got it in the zone. So I wanted a little bit more consistency, and felt like my voice needed to be in some other areas with a younger team, and just to have some more connectivity with the team in whole. So that's why we made the change on the PP, and feel like things have been going pretty good there, and look forward to keep moving forward. But it's harder to score goals if you keep telling our athletes that we don't score a lot of goals. So they just go out, work hard, and try to play as many small games and put them in situations where they feel comfortable to score. It's hard. It's hard to be a freshman and score in college hockey. It is. There's very few. You got the Manis kid over at Clarkson's having a wonderful year. I'm sure I'm missing a couple here or there, but other than that, I mean, we got Haslam with 10, Mulva Hill's got like 8. Those are great freshman years for what it is. Those project. I mean, those are numbers like Szigeti. I think Hustler had 11 freshman year, 12. Not looking at it. I'm just guessing. So you can fact check and correct me. But those are numbers that are consistent with some of the best players that we've had come through here as goal scorers as freshmen, to be able to kind of carry on. And some people are just missing. Pucks are going to bounce here or there. They'll get their bounces, and we know what our team is here heading down the stretch. We know what we have to do to win, and those games will probably be 2-1, and we're comfortable there.
Gotcha. Well, that means obviously you're getting some good goaltending. So I do have a goaltending question for you. Yep. I kind of teased it with you a little bit before we hit record. I was watching a game versus Clarkson a couple of months ago, and I saw that the game went to OT, and then OT ended, so you went to a shootout, and you put in a goalie that was sitting on the bench the whole game for 65 minutes for the shootout. And then I went and checked, just prior to our conversation, I realized you've done this multiple times with Sammy Phelan. So I'm just curious, you're a sophomore goalie. What's your thinking behind putting in a goalie that's been sitting on the bench for 65 minutes just for the shootout?
I mean, it's a good opportunity to get her in a game. The shootout, in terms of non-conference game, there's no weight for it. And in the league, it's a 4th tiebreaker, I believe. But, most importantly, I think it's just a good opportunity. I mean, Sammy shows up for practice. She's doing everything everybody else can. And, hard to crack the lineup with the goaltending that we've got with Cass and Emma this year. So, just gives her an opportunity to get in, and, could have been happier for her. She
beat Harvard.
She got in at Harvard. I got her in the game. We got her in the game against Clarkson too. The Clarkson got a 5-0 on the Tuesday night game here recently. And,
yeah.
With about 10.5, I said, next whistle, Sammy, you're going in. And here it goes. We went 5.5 minutes without a whistle, or 4.5 minutes, and then it's like 5.5. I said, Sammy, get on this side of the door. So she and Emma changed on the fly, and we got Sammy in for the last 4 or 5 minutes of the game, which wasn't a shootout. So, just try to give everybody shows up, within the spirit of the team and coaching, and that it's Division 1. Just try to give everybody an opportunity to get some reward for their effort. And Sammy's done a good job, and then obviously to be able to get the win down at Harvard that way in the shootout was a big boost for her. So that was nice to see. The players on the team were really happy.
Gotcha. So I'm curious, in your 17 years of being head coach, how many times have you swapped goalies on the fly?
Probably 3, I think.
Oh, really? So you've done it multiple times? Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Two or 3. And in very similar situations. I think one was on senior night, trying to get the senior goalie in, because we had multiple senior goalies, so trying to get them all in. But obviously when the goalie's pulled, the goalie has gone on and then gone back off while play has continued too.
Of course,
I haven't, yeah. So, yeah.
That's a great story.
They got to be nimble. We ask them in the recruiting, are you nimble? You got to get through you got to get through the door, just like the players do, to change. So
beautiful. All right, now we got to move on to recruiting and kind of start wrapping this up. Tell folks what RDOD stands for and what it means to you guys.
Yeah, that's funny you mentioned that. Greg Drexel and Stan Moore, when I first started back in 1994, they said, listen, recruit daily or die. And that's what you have to do, to keep your team solid, to stay in this business. And it couldn't be more true. And funny that you bring it up today. I haven't seen Greg in, I probably 4 months, and we finished practice. He lives here in Canton. He's a Nashville scout, and he popped right in, and there he was. And Boomer goes, RDOD, right when he walked in the door. Boomer's Ted, who does our recruiting. So, yeah, I mean, it's a great baseline to be able to do the job as a recruiter. And it is so true in this day and age. It's true. Players moving on, players want to play. There's always some surprise transfer portal players. So you always have to be, I think we do a good job here of not over recruiting and having a roster size that allows everybody to have an opportunity to play. And I think that's the way I like it, because I don't like it. I lived that life for 2 years as a player, couldn't eat my pregame meal because I was so nervous to wait for the coach to decide if I was in and out of the lineup. So, so if I can eliminate those feelings for our athletes, I can, but understanding that it's Division 1, most of them are, have scholarships to come here. So there are some things that go along with it. It's not the Boys and Girls Club, but, to keep those numbers there is, it's harder and harder, because you don't know if some players are going to be leaving for many reasons. We have a lot of open conversations with our players, and I think we have a good idea, where they're at and what might happen. So that allows us to keep our number where it's at and not over recruit. But understand that we're going to get transfers, and some of our players are going to leave for reasons that are better for them.
Yeah, and by my math, pending, of course, the transfer portal and what the ins and outs might be, by my math, you have 4 players leaving this year and 8 coming in, according to my records. So obviously, if there is no transfer portal activity for your specific team, you're going to be +4 in terms of players next year compared to this year, and then obviously you'll have to, address that at the time.
We'll have a bigger roster for sure, and a big part of that was having the number of grad school kids a couple of years ago. And then the June 15th, commitment date now, so there was a kind of a dead period for us, as to not knowing. We hadn't completed the 25, this team, we hadn't completed it. And then June 15th came, and we have to recruit for 26. So we knew we were going to end up with a few more in this class, and everything will shake out. Everybody ends up where, I'm a big believer in, everybody ends up where they're meant to end up. So, but it'll be a little different. It'll be a little different during the week. I'll have a few more decisions to make. This year I've had the goalie decisions to make, but next year there'll be some lineup decisions.
Gotcha. Okay, I got three more questions related to recruiting. So, who's attracted to St. Lawrence University? I know you love Canadians in general, recruiting them, but who's attracted to it? Because you mentioned, Canton and the schools, kind of a, it isn't a big city. It's not a Big Ten school. So, who really says, yeah, that's the kind of place that I want to be at, that you found over the years of recruiting?
Yeah, I mean, we found that, people from very similar, regions, not necessarily rural Ontario, but the outskirts. We don't have a ton of Metro Toronto players from the GTA, but you get out into those, the Barries, the Whitbys, out in the Midwest there, the Cambridges, Stratfords, that kind of area. Out west, if we would do a little bit more, I think we'd have a little bit more success. But we've gotten into Alberta a little bit. We have more recently had some good success with our European players, and that has helped. I think players who, the stuff that we talked about at the beginning, they don't need outside stimulus all the time to feel whole. They like walking around and meeting people, and then that person knows their name 4 or 5 days later. Being only Division I team at the university, has an appeal. And I think people who generally just, like to work hard. I like to always think our teams are hard working, but I think people that come from very similar places that Canton and St. Lawrence are about, and don't get caught up too much in all the material things that are out there nowadays.
Gotcha. All right. Okay. Going to try and keep moving here.
Yep.
On another podcast, you mentioned that you love going to USA Hockey Nationals and watching the U14s
Yeah.
and scouting there. So, what is it when you go to these events? Are you looking at the U16s or the U19s, or are you really actually just looking for the next crop that's coming a year or two later from a recruiting perspective?
Yeah, I mean, you're always looking, for the crop. I mean, I'm fortunate because I pretty much get a pared down Cliff Note version of it. Teddy's and Britt have the list narrowed down, so I don't have to do a lot of the throwing the cast net out there. But you go to these events, the U.S. Nationals, and there's just games after games after games, and you might be caught in a period of time where there's 2 U14 games and not recruitable events, and then you watch the young girls, and they're just playing fearlessly. They're doing the Michigan. It's great to see without the contact. They're cutting across the middle of the ice, and it's fun to watch. And the skill level is as high there. And then you can start to see it disappear once there's some more contact and people start getting bigger and stronger, where that becomes a big part of the game, where the physicality can limit some of the athletes' play.
Gotcha. All right, we'll keep moving. So for your class of 2025, you were done recruiting by October 15th. Sorry, for the class of 2026, you were done by October 15th. For the class of 2027, you were done by the end of August. There's been a highly accelerated recruiting process. Now, you only had 4 players that I believe that you recruited this past recruiting season. But what led to what's your perspective on what happened and why it's been so speedy this past recruiting season?
Yeah, I mean, it's so competitive. I think most recently the biggest piece of why it's been so speedy, with starting with the 26 and 27, has been everybody lost all their 5th-year players. So the 26 class coming in the fall is the result of all the grad players kind of moving on, and so everybody was recruiting the same people, and you're running into the same schools with the players, and you're just like, oh my gosh. And kids, I think at the end of the day, they love it at the beginning. This is my take. They love the attention. They love everything that's going on June 15th. They love the follow-up call. And then by week 3, right around Canada Day, July 4th, it's completely overwhelming. The number of times that, the 10th graders will say to you, I want to make all my visits, narrow it down to 4 or 5 schools. I'm going to do that. I'm going to come in August and I'm going to visit when I can start to visit. I'll do that. And then by week 3, they're getting 10 calls a week. If not more, it just becomes overwhelming. They're finishing up their school with finals. They're getting ready for the summer. They don't want to be doing this. And then they just make their decisions. And I think that's a big part of it. And 2 years ago, the class in 2026, I felt did a real, for the most part, not only our class, but the majority of the recruits entering in 2026, they did a good job and did their visits. That I felt was, the recruiting was heavy all summer. There was a few early commits, couple that said they were coming in August and then committed at the end of July, maybe. They go down to Beantown and commit to some of the New England schools after they see it. And they're just like, oh, this is what I want. But August was big for visits, I felt. And then last year, it just was like a tsunami. Couple of players committed last week of June, and then everybody got nervous and just committed. And I feel like that happened real quick. And for us, we can do it either way, but we know when someone's coming after probably about an hour walking around campus. If it's just maybe if they don't come, we're in second place. They chose another school and we were in second. So the visits are big for us, just to get the feel, to be able to see and meet the people. That's important.
Perfect. Okay, last question. What advice do you have for players and parents that are about to go through the recruiting process, whether it's for 2028 or even 2029? Maybe they'll see you at nationals.
Yeah, I mean, number one is to still try to have some fun with it and enjoy the time. Our kids played sports and now they're done. And my wife and I are going to miss dearly the amount of time that we spent with them on the road in the hotels and with the other families. So try to enjoy those times and not try to get too caught up in what schools are talking to us and being evaluated all the time, because at the end of the day, we all started playing because we love playing, not because we wanted to go to college or play professionally. But there's got to be a commitment to be able to play at our level, and a huge commitment to be able to play at the PW level, unless you're just elite and you have something God-given to you that you're able to do. So to be able to balance that commitment, to be able to get to this level, but also still, be a kid, go enjoy yourself, go on family vacations. You probably don't need to go to all the ID camps. Go on those family trips and you'll be okay. And but in particular, as you get to be a certain age, that year after that sophomore year where the recruiting gets big, I mean, really try to make as much contact with the schools that you're interested as possible. Go to their ID camps, so you're right on campus, and just reach out and just be persistent. I mean, I have a million emails I know I haven't responded to, millions of aggressive, but there's a lot. So just be persistent. 1, 2, 3, just keep emailing. And if it's a place that you want to go, be persistent.
Perfect. All right. Wow. Chris, thank you so much for doing that. I didn't even get to half the questions that I wanted to ask you. We didn't talk about the PWHL. There's just so many other, we didn't talk about the ECAC, a whole bunch of things we could have talked about. So maybe we'll have to get you back on another time. But thank you so much for sharing your hockey history. Obviously, some great insight into Canton and St. Lawrence University, kind of your strategy with the team and ice time and recruiting. This has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for doing this.
You got it, Ray.
I really want to thank Chris for coming on the podcast. He was an amazing guest. You can connect with Chris on the St. Lawrence website or via his Champs app profile. Links to both are in the show notes.